High above Beverly Hills in the 1920s stood a lavish hilltop estate known as Enchanted Hill, home of one of Hollywood's most dazzling power couples, Fred Thomson and Frances Marion. Fred Thomson was a silent-era cowboy hero, while Frances Marion was one of Hollywood's most celebrated screenwriters, among the highest paid of her time. Together they rose from humble beginnings to fabulous fame and fortune, and poured their success into building a dream mansion that epitomized the glamour of their era. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. Fred Thomson's path to movie stardom was anything but typical. Born in 1890 in Pasadena, he excelled not only in looks and charm, but in brains and brawn. He was a Princeton-educated minister and a world-class athlete who set track and field records before finding fame on the silver screen. During World War I, Thomson served as a U.S. Army chaplain, but fate intervened when he broke his leg in a friendly football game at Camp Kearney in 1917, landing him in a military hospital. There, Hollywood sweetheart Mary Pickford came to visit wounded soldiers, and brought along her close friend, screenwriter Frances Marion. The moment Frances met Fred in that hospital ward, sparks flew. She later joked that as a writer, she'd been cynical about love at first sight, until it happened to her. Within days, the pair were planning to marry. They became engaged before Thomson shipped out to France, and when the war ended, the two wed soon after. It was the start of a partnership that would soon conquer Hollywood. Frances Marion was already a force in the film industry by the time she and Thomson married in 1919. Born in 1888, she had blazed trails as a scenarist and screenwriter in the 1910s, penning hit films for stars like Mary Pickford. By 1917, Marion was reportedly one of the highest-paid writers in Hollywood. She even served as a war correspondent in Europe in 1918, further proving her mettle. Sharp, witty, and creative, Marion was instrumental in elevating screenwriting into an art form, and she would go on to win 2 Academy Awards in the early 1930s for her work. In the late 1910s, however, she was better known as the brilliant writer behind Hollywood's biggest silent dramas. Marrying Fred Thomson added a new dimension to her life and career, as the couple quickly became a Hollywood power couple who often collaborated on projects. Thomson's film career took off thanks in part to Marion's influence and Hollywood connections. Initially, Fred had been more interested in directing, but he made his acting debut in a film Frances wrote, just around the corner, and also appeared in The Love Light, a Mary Pickford vehicle that Frances wrote and directed. Audiences responded to Thomson's all-American good looks and athletic charisma. Soon he found his niche as a Western cowboy hero, complete with a trusty equine sidekick, a splendid Palomino horse named Silver King. By the mid-1920s, Fred Thomson was one of the movie industry's top box office draws. In fact, he became the #2 box office star in America for 1926 and 1927, commanding an astounding salary of about $10,000 per week at his peak, the modern equivalent of nearly $10 million per year. He performed many of his own stunts on horseback and developed a huge fan following among audiences who thrilled to his daredevil style. In short, by the late 1920s, Fred Thomson was a major Hollywood star, and along with Frances Marion, he was also getting very rich. Meanwhile, Frances Marion's career in the 1920s was just as stellar. She wrote a string of successful films throughout the decade, from family dramas to romances. For example, she scripted Lightnin' and Stella Dallas, as well as the Rudolph Valentino blockbuster Son of the Sheik and an acclaimed adaptation of The Scarlet Letter. Marion's screenwriting prowess made her indispensable in Hollywood. She was friends with all the top stars and had creative control that few writers of the era enjoyed. In an industry dominated by men, she stood out as a trailblazing woman at the top of her field. By 1925, this power couple had the talent, fame, and wealth that most could only dream of, and so naturally, they set out to build a home that would match their outside success. When Frances and Fred began planning their dream home, they envisioned a cozy hacienda, but it quickly evolved into something far more grandiose. In 1921, the Thomsons purchased a 4-acre parcel of land atop Angelo Drive in the hills above Beverly Hills. The site commanded sweeping views of Los Angeles and lay secluded above Benedict Canyon. However, as their fortunes grew, so did their ambitions for the house. Fred's burgeoning movie career had a unique side effect. He kept acquiring more horses to serve as stunt doubles and companions for Silver King. Housing and training that many horses required an expansive stable and plenty of land, so the Thomsons bought up more adjoining acreage to create a proper equestrian estate. What began as a modest plan for a farmhouse swelled into designs for a veritable compound, complete with large stables, groom's quarters, a so-called cowboy's house, riding rings, and acres of gardens and pastures. To execute their vision, Fred and Frances turned to a young architect named Wallace Neff, who specialized in the Spanish Revival style that was all the rage in California. Neff took over the project in 1924 and transformed the Thomsons' increasingly elaborate wish list into a cohesive design, and the result was spectacular. By 1925, construction was complete on what Frances Marion unabashedly admitted was the largest house on the highest hill in Beverly Hills. They affectionately christened it the Enchanted Hill, a dreamy yet fitting name for their fantastical new estate. Enchanted Hill was a masterpiece of Spanish-inspired architecture blended with Hollywood flair. Though newly built, the mansion was designed to look as if it had stood for centuries. Neff modeled it after an Andalusian cortillo, transplanting old-world charm onto a Southern Californian hilltop. The main house was a rambling two-story structure of white stucco, red-tiled roofs, and arcaded loggias arranged around a central cobbled courtyard. Visitors approached via a long, winding private road up the canyon. At the entrance, guests passed under a stone archway into the courtyard, which featured a bubbling fountain of hand-painted Mexican tiles at its center and lush plantings of cacti, bird of paradise, and exotic flowers around the edges. In true Spanish style, a gatekeeper's lodge stood by the arch, giving the estate an air of a secluded villa. Stepping through the heavy wooden front door, one entered a grand hall that soared 2.5 stories high to painted blue rafters in the ceiling. Straight ahead, a wide masonry arch led into the enormous living room, an impressive salon with a cathedral ceiling and gigantic arched windows framing panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. The estate's amenities were, in a word, sumptuous. Outside the main house, the Thomsons had installed a 100-foot swimming pool on one of the terraces, an enormous pool by the standards of the day, alongside a tiled barbecue pit and an aviary filled with exotic birds. For a time, Fred Francis truly lived a Hollywood fairy tale on the Enchanted Hill, but real life intruded with a tragedy that shocked Tinseltown. In early December 1928, at the height of his fame, 38-year-old Fred Thomson stepped on a rusty nail while working in a stable. The minor puncture wound led to a tetanus infection, which doctors initially misdiagnosed as something harmless. Within days, Fred's condition worsened dramatically, and on Christmas Day 1928, the beloved cowboy star passed away at a Los Angeles hospital. Hollywood was stunned. Thomson's funeral was packed with industry greats. Pallbearers included comedy legend Harold Lloyd and swashbuckling star Douglas Fairbanks, while honorary pallbearers like Buster Keaton also paid respects. Frances was devastated by the loss of her husband and partner. The couple had 2 young sons, a toddler and an infant, and Frances suddenly found herself a widowed mother. Heartbroken, she could not bear to remain in the palatial home that she and Fred had built together, and within weeks, the grieving Frances decided to put Enchanted Hill up for sale, saying the place held too many painful memories for her alone. In mid-1929, barely half a year later, Enchanted Hill sold. The magnificent estate passed through a series of new owners and an uncertain future. Oilman Ellis Barnes, who bought it from Marion, kept the property for over a decade. In 1945, the estate found a devoted new steward, Paul Kolsman, a German-American inventor. Under his ownership, the property was preserved largely as it was in the 1920s, a rare time capsule of old Hollywood grandeur that he enjoyed for several decades. Then in 1997, the Enchanted Hill property was sold to a new owner with very deep pockets, Microsoft billionaire Paul Allen. What happened next remains a sore point for lovers of historic architecture. Rather than preserve the old mansion, Allen opted to demolish it. The grand mansion by Wallace Neff, the guest house, the stables with their mahogany floors, the terrace gardens and orchards, all of it was bulldozed into oblivion. Allen reportedly had plans to build an enormous modern complex on the site, but ultimately he never did. As of today in 2025, Enchanted Hill remains essentially raw land. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Enchanted Hill? Let me know down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.